The hum of the night shift had become second nature to me. While the world slept, I worked tirelessly, a security officer stationed at the city hospital. The hours were long, the routine often dull, but I never complained. Every sacrifice felt worthwhile because of who waited for me at home. Rena, my wife of 3 years. Rena had a way of lighting up the room with just her presence. She was thoughtful, gentle, and fiercely supportive. From the very beginning, we had built our lives on a foundation of love and trust. Our marriage wasn't glamorous, but it was real. We made up for fancy dinners with candlelit leftovers and exchanged lavish vacations for quiet evenings watching old movies. I believed that in the simplicity of our lives lived the truest kind of love. Every day before heading to work, I left a note on her side of the bed. Something small, sometimes a joke, sometimes a memory, but always a reminder that she was the center of my world. She would text me in return during her lunch break, often with photos of our cat, Muffin, curled up beside her. Those little exchanges kept our bond strong, even during the nights we couldn't share. Our neighbor, Arjun, was a familiar face. In his early 30s and living alone, he was the kind of man everyone liked, friendly, polite, always ready to help with odd jobs. Once, when the kitchen sink overflowed, he fixed it before I could even get home. Rena often mentioned how helpful he was, and I appreciated that she wasn't alone when I was away. I never imagined I had reason to think otherwise. Our home was modest, a 2-bedroom apartment on the city's quieter side. It wasn't much, but it held the warmth of shared dreams. I had started saving for a surprise anniversary getaway, something I hoped would rekindle the magic we first felt. Lately, I'd noticed Rena seemed distant, more distracted than usual, but I chalked it up to stress or boredom. Everyone had phases. I still remember the moment before everything changed. It was a Thursday just past midnight, and I stood by the hospital window during a break, sipping stale coffee. The city glowed below, and I felt a pang of longing. I missed her. In a spontaneous moment, I decided I'd surprise her the next night. My shift was ending early, and for once, I'd be home in time for dinner. I imagined her smile when she opened the door. I pictured us sitting on the couch, laughing over takeout. That vision stayed with me throughout the night. It was comforting. It was home. What I didn't know, what I couldn't possibly suspect, was that this very act of love, this plan to come home early, would unravel the life I thought I knew. The seed of betrayal had already taken root, and by the time I returned, everything would be different. Friday evening arrived cloaked in a quiet drizzle. The air was thick with the scent of wet asphalt and distant thunder, but my spirit felt light. My shift ended earlier than expected, and with a small box of Rena's favorite pastries in hand, I started the drive home. I couldn't wait to see her face light up in surprise. As the city blurred past my window, memories filled the silence. I thought about our first date, how she had nervously spilled coffee on herself, but still laughed it off, unbothered and radiant. I remembered how she once waited outside my workplace with a handmade sign that read, "My hero," after I pulled an injured man from a burning car. She was my constant, my anchor in a life full of chaos. The apartment complex was unusually quiet when I arrived. The hallway, usually alive with muffled television sounds and barking dogs, now echoed with every step I took. I paused at the door, balancing the pastry box under one arm while unlocking it with the other. The door creaked open. Inside, the lights were dim. At first, I smiled. Maybe she had planned something. A candlelit dinner? A surprise of her own? I stepped in, slipping off my shoes quietly. The scent of lavender lingered in the air, mixed faintly with something else, something unfamiliar. The living room was untouched, silent. I called out softly, "Rena?" No answer. The silence was odd, but not alarming. She could be in the shower, I reasoned, or perhaps on a call with her sister. As I moved toward the bedroom, I noticed the door was slightly ajar and a faint golden flicker spilled into the hallway.
Candlelight.
I slowed my pace, suddenly unsure of myself. My heart began to race, not from fear, but confusion. Why hadn't she answered? Why was the door half open? Then I heard it. A breathy laugh, hers, followed by a low, masculine murmur. Time slowed. I stood still, disbelief hardening into dread. My mind clung to reason. Perhaps the TV was on, or she was watching an old movie with a friend. But no, her laugh was real. Unfiltered. Intimate. Familiar, but not meant for me. I pushed the door open another inch, just enough to see. There she was. Rena lay nestled under the blanket, her bare shoulders peeking out, facing someone him. Arjun. The neighbor. His hand rested gently on her back as they whispered, laughing quietly, oblivious to the world outside that room. Oblivious to me. The pastry box slipped from my hand, landing on the floor without a sound. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply closed the door and turned away, my body moving before my thoughts could catch up. The apartment, once our shared sanctuary, had become a stranger's place. And I realized, in that crushing silence, that the life I loved was no longer mine. The drive that night was a blur. Rain smeared the windshield as I drifted through half-empty streets, guided not by direction, but by instinct. My hands clenched the steering wheel, knuckles pale, heart hollow. I didn't know where I was going. I only knew I couldn't stay. I found myself parked outside a roadside motel, the neon sign flickering with indifferent welcome. Inside, the room was stale, dim, and forgettable, perfect for someone trying to disappear. I sat on the edge of the bed, still in uniform, staring at nothing. My phone buzzed once. Her name lit up the screen. I let it ring, then turned the device face down. The betrayal replayed in slow motion, the laughter, the softness of their voices, the ease of their bodies together. I'd imagined that intimacy reserved for us. For me. But now, it lived in a moment I couldn't unsee. I didn't feel anger, not yet. Just emptiness. A kind of grief that arrived in waves, not for what happened, but for everything I thought we had. Was every smile a lie? Every moment we shared just theater? I searched for signs I might have missed. Her subtle disinterest, the way she avoided my eyes when I asked about her day. They were puzzle pieces I had ignored, now fitting together into a painful picture. By morning, the rain had stopped. The sky was a pale, indifferent gray. I drove back to the apartment, not to confront, not to plead, but to collect what was left of myself. The building stood unchanged, as though nothing had happened. But to me, it was no longer home. She wasn't there when I arrived. Perhaps she had gone to work. Perhaps she was with him. I didn't want to know. Inside, the silence was louder than before. I moved methodically, packed a bag, grabbed essentials, took nothing more than I needed. On the kitchen counter, I left my wedding ring and a note. I saw what I needed to see. I won't destroy what's already broken. Goodbye. That was all I could offer. No accusations. No dramatics. Just the truth. Later that evening, I sat with my brother at a quiet cafe, nursing a cup of bitter coffee. I told him everything. He stared at me in disbelief, then shook his head. You should have hit the guy, he muttered. But I couldn't. Violence would only cheapen the pain. I had lost something deeper than pride. I had lost trust and, perhaps, part of myself. I began blocking the noise, her calls, her messages, even her apologies when they eventually came. I wasn't ready to hear them. I wasn't ready to forgive. All I knew was that I had left, not just the apartment, but the version of me that once believed love alone could protect a heart. Months passed like chapters in a book I hadn't meant to write. At first, the days were heavy, filled with silence and self-blame. I kept replaying that night. Her voice, their laughter, the betrayal etched into memory. But over time, the pain dulled from a sharp wound to a quiet scar. It didn't vanish, but I learned to live with it. I moved in with my cousin for a while, then rented a small studio apartment on the city's edge. It was modest, with creaky floors and a view of a worn-out park, but it was mine. A space untouched by memory. I filled it with quiet routines, early jogs, late-night reading, meals cooked by my own hands. Solitude became a strange kind of therapy. Rena tried to reach me. At first, every day. Then less often. Her messages were long, sometimes apologetic, sometimes desperate. She claimed it was a mistake, a moment of weakness. That she still loved me. That she didn't know why she did it. But none of her words could erase what I had seen with my own eyes. Love doesn't stumble into betrayal, it chooses it. I never responded. I didn't need closure from her. I needed to rebuild it within myself. In time, I returned to the hospital, resumed my shifts, and rediscovered a sense of purpose in my work. Helping others reminded me of who I was before the heartbreak, a man of quiet strength, not defined by someone else's deception. One evening, after escorting an elderly patient back to her room, she looked at me and said, "You've got kind eyes." Like someone who's seen pain, but didn't let it make him cruel. I smiled for the first time in what felt like forever. It was in that moment I realized I was healing. Then came Maya. She was a volunteer at the hospital, soft-spoken, intelligent, and remarkably kind. Our conversations started simple, shared lunches in the break room, books exchanged, a joke here and there. But it wasn't love, not yet. It was trust, cautiously growing like a seed in thawing soil. I didn't rush it. I wasn't searching for a replacement. I was simply learning how to connect again, how to believe that not everyone comes bearing hidden daggers behind warm smiles. One day, Maya asked me, "Do you think broken people can love again?" I looked at her, really looked. Only the ones who are strong enough to mend themselves first. And maybe that's what I was doing, not forgetting the past, but refusing to let it define me. Rena and Arjun were no longer weights I carried. They were lessons etched in stone. Love without honesty is a house without foundation. I wasn't who I was before, but maybe, just maybe, I was becoming someone better.